You always wanted to have dialogues in your Unreal Engine game, but did not know how to code it? Let us make a simple, yet flexible and easily reusable dialogue system together in less than an hour. It is component-based, so you can attach it to any actor. It uses data tables, so you can easily manage dialogues for multiple characters, and it also allows you to trigger events with your dialogue. Just a quick note here. I will not explain all the little details about why we need a certain variable or event. We are going for maximum efficiency here, so I will only explain what is absolutely necessary. The system is not that complicated, you will most probably understand everything by the time we finish making it, but should you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments. So let's get going. The way it will work is the following. We will need a data table for each dialogue and a data struct that will populate the table. Then we will need the actor component, which will manage the user interface. It will read from the data table, it will manage the input mode changes and the event triggers. For the user interface, we will make a main window that will manage the flow of our dialogue. It will be able to switch between two different sub-user interfaces, one for when the NPC speaks and one for when the player. We will need to make these sub-interfaces, of course, and last but not least, we need to have a template for the options the player can choose from. Once we created all of these elements, we will make an example conversation just so you can see how the system works. Let us open Unreal Engine. I will use the first person template. First, let's make a new folder for our dialogue system. Enter the folder, hit right click, blueprint, structure and name this s_conversation. Add 5 variables. The first will be called id_own and it is an integer. The second is player speaking and it is a boolean. Next is called text and it is a text. Then we need id children, which is an integer array. And the last will be called trigger and it is a name. Now go back to the folder, right click and select miscellaneous and data table, and from the drop down menu select our newly created s_conversation. Let us name our new data table dt_conversation_example. We will leave this empty for now and return to it when we have everything else ready. Go back to the folder again, right click, select blueprint class and then actor component. Name it bpc_conversant. Now go back to the folder, right click, select user interface, widget blueprint and user widget. Name it wbp_conv_main. Using the same method, we create 3 more widgets and name them wbp_conv_npc, wbp_conv_player and wbp_conv_answer. Great! Next we will go through all of our blueprints and create both the variables and event nodes in advance, so when we start writing the logic, we do not have to jump between the different blueprints. Let us open the bpc_conversant first. Let us go to variables, click on the plus sign and add the new one. Call it name and click on the eye icon to make it instance editable. Add the new variable, call it conversation table, and for the variable type, select data table and object reference. Make this instance editable as well. Create another variable, call it conversation_widget, and for type select wbp_conv_main and object reference. Now go to the event graph and delete everything. Right click and start typing custom event into the search box, and once it appears in the search results, select it. Name it start conversation. Create another custom event and name it end conversation. Create a third custom event and name it dialogue trigger. After that, click on the compile icon in the top left corner because Unreal sometimes needs this to add input variables to custom events. Click on the start conversation event and in the details tab, look for the inputs field and click on the plus sign to add the new input. Call it first row name and select name for its type. Next, select the dialogue trigger event, add an input parameter, call it trigger name and select name as its type. Compile and save the blueprint. Next, open the wbp_conv_main blueprint. Add the new variable, call it conversations and select s_conversation for its type. Remember, this is the struct we created. In the details tab, change its type from single to array. This is very important. Next, make a new variable, call it first conversation row and change its type to name. Unreal will probably add it as an array by default, so in the details tab, change it back to a single. Make it instance editable and expose on spawn. In the top right corner, select the graph tab. Now create a custom event and and call it end conversation. Create another one, call it NPC speaks. Create a third custom event and call it player speaks. Create a fourth one and call it next speaker. For this last event, add 2 input parameters. Compile first if you need to. Name the first input parameter ID selected option. It is going to be an integer and a single. Name the next one ID children, and it is also an integer, but it is an array. Now, your next speaker event might or might not have a blue node symbol. You do not need to worry about this. Compile and save the blueprint. Next, open the wbp_conv_player. Add the new variable and call it options. The type is going to be wbp_conv_answer, object reference, and it is going to be an array. Add another variable, call it main_UI, select wbp_conv_main, object reference as type. Do not forget to change it back to single. Go to the event graph, remember top right corner, add the custom event and call it set_answers_player. Compile and add an input to this event. Name it conversations. For type, select rs_conversation structure and make sure it is an array. Add another custom event, call it button was clicked and add 2 inputs to it. Name the first one ID own, select integer for type and make it a single. Name the second parameter ID children, select integer for type, but this time it needs to be an array. Compile and save the blueprint. Let us now open the wbp_conv_npc. Add the new variable, call it main_UI. Change its type to wbp_conv_main, object reference, and make sure it is a single. Add the custom event called setUpWindow and add an input to it called conversations. Change its type to rs_conversation structure and make sure it is an array. Compile and save. Last but not least, open the wbp_conv_answer. Add the variable, name it conversation. Change its type to s_conversation and make sure it is a single. Add another variable, call it wbp_conv_player. Select wbp_conv_player object reference for its type. For both of these variables, select instance editable and expose on spawn. Compile and save. Now, we are finally ready to create the user interface and add the logic. Stay inside the wbp_conv_answer blueprint. In the top right corner, change back to the designer. In the palette search box, look for overlay and drag and drop it into the designer area. Now, look for button and drop it inside the overlay. Now, look for text and drag and drop it under the button in the hierarchy. Now, select the button and in the details tab, rename it to button_choice. Now, select the text block, change its name to player text in the details tab and tick the isVariable option. Go back to the button and change the horizontal and vertical alignments to fill out the whole space. It is the 4th option. Do the same for the text block. In the appearance section, select color and opacity, click on the color picker and change it to black. Now scroll down and in the wrapping section, select auto wrap text. Compile and save. Now go back to the graph. Do notice that the button choice and the player text appeared in the variables list. You should have an event called event construct by default. If you do not see it, right click, search for event construct and add it to the graph. From the variables, drag and drop the conversation into the graph area. You will get a pop-up message, choose the get conversation option. Drag the output pin and start typing break. You will see break s_conversation option. Select it. Now drag and drop the player text variable into the graph area, drag on the output pin and select set text brackets text. Connect its execute pin onto the event construct, open the break s_conversation node and connect its text output into the text input of the set text node. Rearrange the nodes if you need to make the graph a bit tidier. Now select the button_choice variable and in the details tab scroll down to the event section. Click the plus sign next to the onClicked event. This will create a new event in the graph area. Copy the conversation and break s_conversation nodes. Then drag and drop the wbp_conv_player variable into the graph area and select the get option. Drag on its output pin, start typing button was clicked and once it is found, select it. Connect the execute pins and from the break s_conversation pin, connect the ID own pin into the ID own input of the button was clicked and the ID children into the ID children. Compile and save. Now, let's open the wbp_conv_player blueprint. Change to the designer mode, look for the scroll box and drop it into the area. Make it a variable by ticking the checkbox and delete the number and underscore from the name. Compile and save and go back to the graph. Drag and drop the scrollbox variable to the graph area and select the get option. Look for the clearChildren function and add it. Connect the execute pin to the setAnswer_player event. Now add the for each loop and connect the conversation input of the event to the array input of the loop. In the loop body, we add a create widget node and from the drop-down select the wbp_conv_answer. Notice we will see our exposed inputs, the conversation and the wbp_conv_player. Drag the wbp_conv_player input pin and look for self. Then connect the array element node for the for each loop for the conversation input. Now drag and drop the scroll box again, select the get option and look for add child. Connect the execute pin to the create widget and the return value to content. Drop the main_UI to the graph area, select the get option and look for the next speaker event. Connect all input pins to the respective output pins of the button was clicked event. Compile and save. Now open the wbp_conv_npc blueprint and select the designer. Look for overlay and drop it into the area. Now look for vertical box and drag it under the overlay in the hierarchy. Look for text and drag it under the vertical box. Select this text block, delete the number and the underscore from its name and tick the isVariable tick box. Now look for button and drag it under the vertical box, so not under the text block. Rename it to button_next. Change the horizontal alignment to right. Go back to the vertical box and change both horizontal and vertical alignment to fill. Now select the text block and change the size from auto to fill. Search for another text and drag it under the button. In the text field write next and in the color and opacity change the color to black. Compile and save and go back to the graph. Select the button_next variable and click the plus sign next to the onClicked event to create the corresponding event in the graph. Get a reference to the main_UI and search for next speaker. Connect it to the execute pin of the onClicked event. Select the conversations pin of the setup window event and type get in the search box. Select the get brackets a copy option. Drag the text block variable into the area and look for set text brackets text option. Connect the execute pin to the setup window event. Select the output pin of our get node, drag it and search for break and select the break as_conversation option. Connect the text to the text input of the set text node and the ID on and ID children pins to the corresponding input pins of the next speaker. From the out execute pin of the set text node, create a branch node. Drop the button next into the area and look for set visibility. Change the drop down menu to hidden and connect the execute pin to the true option of the branch node. From the break node, select the ID children pin and add an isEmpty node to it and connect its output pin into the condition pin of the branch. We may add a comment to these few nodes if we want. You can add the comment by highlighting the nodes and pressing C on your keyboard. Now let's move to our wbp_conv_main blueprint. Go to the designer tab. Look for a canvas panel and drop it into the graph area. Now look for a border and drop it under the canvas panel. Change its alignment to 0.5 and 0.5 and the X size to 1300 and the Y size to 250. Drop down the anchors menu, select the bottom middle option and finally change the position X to 0 and the position Y to -250. In the appearance section, open the brush section and change the tint to something more gray. Search for vertical box and drop it under the border in the hierarchy. Now search for a horizontal box and drop it under the vertical box. Search for text and drag it under the horizontal box. Rename it to name_txtbx and set it as a variable. In the text field, write name. Search for button and drag it under the horizontal box, so it should be on the same level level as the text block. Name it to button_exit. Look for text and drag it under the button. In the text field, write a capital X. Of course, if you do a UI overhaul later, you can replace this with an image. Change the color and opacity to black. Highlight the button, set the horizontal alignment to right, then highlight the name _txtbx and change the size from auto to fill. Look for border and drag it under the vertical box, so it should be on the same level as the horizontal box. Change its size from auto to fill. Search for widget switcher and drag it under the border. Change its name, delete the number and the underscore. Search for wbp_conv_mpc and drag it under the widget switcher. Then search for wbp_conv_player and also drag it under the widget switcher. If you see the next button appear on the bottom right corner of the white area, you did it right. Now select the border and under appearance and brush, select the brush color and change it to a very dark gray. Compile and save and go to the graph area. Delete the default events if you have not done so already, we will not need those. First, select the button_exit variable and create an onClicked event for it using the plus sign. Drag it to the top for easier categorization. This will be a complex graph. Drag onto the execute pin and look for end conversation. Now click on the plus sign to add a new variable. Name it bpc_conversant and change its type to bpc_conversant object reference. Make it instance editable and expose on spawn. Drag it onto the area and select get. Drag its output pin, search for end conversation and connect the execute pin to the other end conversation event. Now highlight what we did so far, press C to create a comment and name it end conversation. Drag the widget switcher to the graph area. Drag on its output pin and search for set active widget index. Connect it to the MPC speaks event. Now drag the wbp_conv_mpc variable to the area and look for setup window. Connect the execute pin to the set active widget index. Drag the conversation variable, select the get option and connect it to the conversation input of the setup window. Now copy the widget switcher and set active widget index nodes and connect them to the player speaks event. Change the index input of the set active widget index node to 1. Drag to the wbp_conv_player into the graph and search for set answers player. Drag the conversations variable to the area, choose get and connect it to the set answers player. Connect the execute pins. Highlight these two events, add the comment and call it setup speakers. Now right-click and look for the event construct. You might still have it on your graph area if you did not delete the default events. Drag the bpc_conversant to the graph area and select the get option. Drag onto its output pin and type name, then scroll down and select the get name option. Now drag the name _txtbx variable into the graph and choose set text brackets text option. Connect the output pin of the name node into the in text input pin of the set text node, then connect the execute pin to the event construct. Now drag the conversations variable into the graph area, choose get and search for clear. Connect the execute pin to the set text. Highlight all the nodes, press C and add the comment and call it prepare main window. Drag the wbp_conv_player variable to the area, drag on its pin and start typing main UI and choose the set main_UI option. Drag onto the main_UI input pin and create a reference to self. Connect the execute pin to the clear node. Do the same for wbp_conv_mpc. Highlight these nodes, create a comment and call it initialize subwidgets. Drop the bpc_conversant to the graph area and select the get option. Start typing conversation table, then scroll to the bottom and select the get conversation table option. Drag onto the output pin of this node and look for get data table row. Now drag the first conversation row variable to the graph, select the get option and connect it to the row name input pin of the get data table row node. Now connect the execute pin to the previous logic. Drop the conversations variable to the area and create an add node. Connect its execute pin to the row found option of the get data table row node and the out row to the add node. Now highlight this new part of the code and create a comment and call it get starting row and add it to the conversation list. From the execute output pin of the add node, create a branch node. Drag onto the out row pin of the get data table row node, start typing break and select the break s_conversation option. Connect the isPlayerSpeaking output into the condition of the branch node. From the true pin of the branch, call the player speaks function, while from the false branch, call the NPC speaks function. Highlight these nodes, add the comment and call it determine who speaks. Now let us move to the next speaker event. Drag onto the execute pin and add the sequencer. Add an extra pin to it by clicking the plus sign. Drag onto the index 0 pin of the sequencer and add the branch node. Drag onto the ID children parameter of the next speaker event and add an isEmpty node to it. Connect its output to the branch node. Add the end conversation to the true pin of the branch, then highlight these nodes and add the command by pressing C and call it end conversation if no more children. Now select the index 1 pin of the sequencer and add a get data table row node to it. Drag the bpc_conversant variable to the graph, select the get option. Drag onto its pin and start typing get conversation table and select it from the list. Connect it to the data table pin of the get data table row node. Drag onto the ID selected option pin of the next speaker event and type to string into the search box. Drag onto the output pin and type to name and select it. Now we can connect this to the row name input of the get data table row node. Add the branch node to its execute pin. Drag onto the out row pin, start typing break and select break s_conversation. Drag onto the trigger pin and add the not equal node to it and connect the output of this node into the condition pin of the branch node. Drag the bpc_conversant variable to the graph, select the get option. Look for dialog trigger event and call it. Connect its execute pin to the true pin of the branch. Connect the trigger output of the break s_conversation node to the trigger name input of the dialog trigger. Highlight the nodes, add the comment and call it check if there is a dialog trigger. Select the index 2 pin of the sequencer and add the branch node to it. Drag onto the ID children pin of the next speaker event and add an isNotEmpty node to it. Connect its output pin to the condition pin of the branch node. Drag the conversations variable to the graph area, select the get option. Add the clear node to it and connect the execute pin to the true pin of the branch node. Add a for each loop and drag its array input pin to the ID children pin of the next speaker event. Navigate to the check if there is a dialog trigger area and select the following 5 nodes and copy them. Connect the execute pin of the get data table row to the loop body pin of the for each loop and the array element pin to the input of the toString node. Drag the conversations variable to the graph, select the get option and create an add node. Connect its execute pin to the row found output pin of the get data table row node and the out row pin to the add node. Now highlight this part, add the comment to it and name it update the conversations array with new data. Create a branch node from the completed pin of the for each loop. Drag the conversations variable, drag onto its output pin and start typing get and choose get a copy. Drag onto its output pin and look for break s_conversation. Connect the isPlayerSpeaking pin to the condition pin of the branch. Add the player speaks node to the true side of the branch and an NPC speaks node to the false side. Highlight the nodes, add the comment and call it decide who speaks. Compile and save the blueprint. Open the bpc_conversant blueprint. Add a doOnce node to the start conversation event. Add the create widget node and select the wbp_conv_main from the dropdown. Add the reference to self to the bpc_conversant input pin and connect the first row name to the start conversation into the first conversation row of the create widget node. Drag the conversation_widget variable to the graph area and select the set option. Connect Connect both pins to the respective output pins of the Create Widget node. Add an Add to Viewport node and connect both input pins to the output pins of the Set node. Create a Get Player Controller node by right-clicking and searching for it. Drag onto its output pin and create a Set Input Mode UI only node. Connect it to the Add to Viewport node and connect the output pin of the Set node into the In Widget to Focus pin. Drag onto the output pin of the Get Player Controller node and in the search box start typing Show. You will see a Set Show Mouse Cursor option. Select that. Connect its execute pin to the Set Input node and tick the box next to the Show Mouse Cursor pin. You can add the comment if you like. Drag the conversation widget variable to the graph area, select the Get option. Create a Remove from Parent node and connect its execute pin to the execute pin of the End Conversation event. Right-click and look for Get Player Controller node, drag its output pin, look for Set Show Mouse Cursor and connect it to the execute pin of the Remove from Parent node. Drag onto the output pin of the Get Player Controller again and look for Set Input Mode Game Only. Connect the execute pin. Drag the conversation underscore widget to the graph area, select the Set option and connect its execute pin. Leave the conversation widget pin as is. Drag the execute pin to the reset pin of the Do Once node that we used in the start conversation logic. You can add another comment here if you like. From the execute pin of the dialog trigger event, create a branch node. Drag onto the trigger name pin of the event, add a not equal node, and connect it to the condition pin of the branch node. Now click the plus sign next to the event dispatchers. Name it On Dialog Event Triggered. Compile the blueprint. Select this and on the Details tab, click on the plus sign next to the inputs. Name this parameter Dialog Trigger. Its type should be a name and single. Drag the On Dialog Event Triggered onto the graph and select the Call option. Connect the execute pin to the true pin of the branch node and the dialog trigger pin to the trigger name pin of the dialog trigger event. You can add the comment if you want. Compile and save the blueprint, and we are done. Congratulations, you have a working dialog system in Unreal Engine that you created yourself. So let me show you how the system works by an example. Open the dt_conversation_example, click on the Add button 6 times and prepare the table as shown in the image. Now, inside the folder, right-click and select Blueprint class and actor. Name it Conversation Tester. Add the sphere and then the bpc_conversion component. Compile and save. Now click on the component and in the name field type the sphere and for the conversation table select the dt_conversation_example. Now go to the event graph. Delete the begin overlap and tick events. We will only need the begin play event. Drag the bpc_conversion to the area and choose get. Drag onto its output pin and start typing bind event on dialog event triggered. From the execute pin, create a delay node and set the duration to 1. Drag the bpc_conversion to the graph again and call its start conversation event. Connect the execute pin. In the first row pin, type 0. Actually, we do not need to hardcode this first row. It can be determined by code and it does not necessarily need to be index 0. Maybe you have a quest from an NPC and based on the quest state, you want to have different conversations. This way you can store all conversations with that NPC inside a single data table. All you need to change is the index of the first row. From the event pin of the bind event node, create a custom event. Do note that this new event will have the dialog trigger pin by default. Call it change color. From this event, create a branch node. Drag onto the dialog trigger pin and create an equals node. To the empty space, type change color or copy it from row 6 of the data table. Connect the output pin to the branch node. Now drag the sphere variable onto the graph and select the get option. Drag onto its output pin and look for set material. From the drop-down list, select any material. I will choose the alias reference material as it has a bright color. Connect this node to the true pin of the branch node. Compile and save. Drag the conversation tester blueprint into the map, hit play and see the dialog system in action. I really hope that you found this video useful. If you did, give it a like and subscribe. If you want to see the game I developed this conversation system for, watch the video on the screen. Thank you very much for watching. See you in the next one. Bye!